You need to understand the abilities that you have. You need to recognize them. You need to exercise them, embrace them. They were given to us for a reason, as we've established. You don't have to be a brilliant mastermind of anything to learn that this gift is yours. How different would people be if they began to see the world through those kinds of eyes?
You have wondered what you would be able to do if you were the ultimate version of you, right? You would then have an easy time creating what you want, and yes, effortlessly enjoying life too. Now, you may know this already, the influence you have over your reality is far beyond what you've been told. Soon, you realize that your outer world is merely a mirror of your inner world, and we're here to connect the dots for you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to God Mode.
Welcome back to God Mode. Today we're going to talk about some fun stuff. We're going to continue on some weird topics. We've got more that I haven't had a chance to ask David yet. And then we're also going to talk about what it means to learn remote viewing. And why would you ever want to learn remote viewing? And why we're bringing remote viewing and David into the Upgrade platform. And frankly, what is this remote viewing course that we're doing here, and how is it different than previous remote viewing trainings that you've done? And what are these so-called accelerants that we're doing? And but I want to start off with some weird stuff, and then we'll actually talk about what the training is. And then at the end, we'll talk about some even more weird stuff. Yeah? Sounds good, huh?
Sure. Weird stuff is good.
I agree. Man, you were just telling me about interstellar portals as we were on our way to getting some drinks and
matcha tea.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about what these people that you met when you went on one of the call it expedition or call it a trip.
Yeah, the unit sent three of us, Mel, Ed, and myself, TDY, to Chaco Canyon, because I'm not sure where approval for that came from. That was not my purview. I wasn't a decision maker like that in the unit, the remote viewing unit. But I know that Fern Gavin, the GS-15, who was the program manager, was involved in the decision, and he probably had permission from somebody above him to be able to do this. And we had been for a series of months kind of trying to track what were different hotspots, particularly in the desert Southwest. And I'm sure that the original general interest in that probably stemmed from Ed Dames. And he, working with Fern, probably got permission to do that. But we were working a series of blind targets. It was Gabrielle, Mel Riley, Ed, myself. We were the four-person team doing that. And we were sending the results back to Ed, who was giving them to Fern Gavin, and Gavin was doing the analysis on it. Mm. And the first thing that, pinpointed a particular area was a particular contour sketch, which is really kind of a stage 2 sketch, as you know. It could be a really rudimentary stage 3 sketch. But this contour sketch matched a particular mountain that's in that area. I forget the name of the mountain. It's Mount Chacomo or something like that.
And if people are wondering what stage 2 and 3s are, we'll explain that later on in the podcast.
That's structure. Yeah. So we'll get to that point. But so when those contour sketches matched the contour of this large mountain, that became a point of interest and a point of focus. Mm. So the idea was, send us there, because we felt that there was a lot of anomalous activity going on in this particular place. By anomalous, I mean if there were UFOs in the area, or if there was some sort of passage through portals or something else in that area, it would be there. Wow. There's a reason why this mountain is there. There's a reason why the Pueblo Indians still refer to it as, the center of the universe, which is what they call it. So we fly out there, and we have rooms at the Abiquiu Inn in Abiquiu, New Mexico. And Gabrielle stays behind for good reason. First of all, she's the woman, and we didn't need a woman coming along with us. Not that she couldn't have done it, but it just would have been inappropriate probably. And plus, Fern Gavin was kind of an old school guy, and he was like, not going to send her with you three tramps, because I know how you guys talk. So that was a good thing. So we were there, and we were trying to decide how we're going to approach this. So we are at the Abiquiu Inn late at night, and we are there. We have dinner. We walk outside because we want to see the mountain in the moonlight that night. And when we're out there, we bump into Ron Blackburn, who's a PhD physicist who was at Lawrence Livermore Air Force Base. I'd never met Ron before. And Ron later became one of my students, remote viewing students, and went all the way through all 7 levels.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The other guy that was there was Jacques Vallée, who's I believe, French-Canadian author who had written a number of alien contact books on UFOs and things. But I didn't know of him either because, remember, I didn't come from that world. That just was not stuff I talked about or had an interest in. And I was there because I was just supporting my colleagues to be there, and I had participated in all of the remote viewing sessions leading up to this. We're looking around, and we don't see anything except Ron Blackburn has some instruments in his hand that were like right straight out of Back to the Future, that mad scientist there. I mean, this thing has needles and lights and, spinning antennas, and I just was curious from an engineering perspective, what are these? And he said, "Oh, I'm trying to measure anomalous activity." And are there any anomalous activity out there that you're measuring? Not yet. It's just like, okay. So everybody retires for the night, and the next morning, those two go their way. But Ed and Mel and I, we get up, have our maps, plan our day, plan what we're going to do. We're going to go to this mountain, and we are going to find this little dirt spur that goes off and either walk or drive if we can to the top of this mountain, and we're going to be there at night to see what we can see.
What's the mountain called?
Mount Chacoma.
Yeah, the highest point in Jemez Mountains.
Jimenez. The highest point in the
Jimenez.
Jimenez mountain range. Yeah, center of the universe in Puebloan. So,
Oh, wow.
well, Chacoma actually doesn't stand for center of the universe. That's just what Puebloans refer to it as. Chacoma, I think, stands for big rock.
Oh, interesting.
So we are going to go to this mountain and find it. We have a 1/50,000 military map, lens-static compasses. We have, flashlights. We didn't have any night observation devices simply because the TO&E of this particular unit did not provide tactical equipment, obviously. So we couldn't get that, and you have to hand receipt for those kinds of things. So it's not like we could go on Fort Meade and go knocking on doors and say, "Hey, do you guys have any night observation devices so we could sign out?" So we didn't have anything like that, which would have been handy to have.
Yeah.
So we're driving, and we get a late start, which is typical of us because we were just shopping for groceries and beer and everything else that you needed, essentials, because we were maybe going to hike into this mountain, right?
Yeah.
So we're driving, and I'm navigating, and Mel's in the back, and Ed's driving, and we're in this giant red Cadillac that we rented because they didn't have SUVs at that point. I mean, they had Jeeps, but not Cadillac SUVs or other things, and even the Jeeps were rare. You didn't see those to rent very often. Well, there weren't any, so we ended up with a Cadillac. So we were driving up, and we had gone up the mountain on this kind of improved dirt road, which means it's graveled, right? And it's kind of washboardy in places, but it's a 2-lane road going up and coming back. And we go past, and I cannot find a hole in the brush or a break in the brush where we would find this 2.5 mile, 3 mile path to the top of the mountain. And I certainly can't find, at least not from the approach path we were on, a road where we could turn off and drive to it. We're about to turn around for about the fourth time, and I'm really depressed about my navigation skills at this juncture, right? Because I'm usually a really good land navigator. But it's getting dark, and the temperature is expected to drop down into the teens that night. And way up in the distance, up the road, and the road bends around to the left, Mel Riley sees two men walking. I could barely see him, but he was a photo image interpreter, and he had eagle eyes. So he said, there's two guys walking. They're walking down. So we drive up there, and as we get closer, it's clear that they are indigenous. They are Pueblo Indians, and one of them is armed. He has a pistol stuck in the front of his pants, and so the other two guys weren't concerned. Of course, it's my nature, and it was my background that I was a little concerned. Like, I'm trying to look around the car for what weapons I might be able to use if somebody, puts a gun in my ribs or something. And it was, of course, needless. They weren't those kind of guys. They had lost their truck, stuck in a ditch because of the snow when they were up trying to cut firewood. That's what they said. So they get in the back with Mel, and Mel is, of course, handing them beers, which they are happy to receive. And we're driving them back to their ranch, which is maybe 40 minutes away. But we no more than do a 3-point turn on that road and start to head back down because we give up on this trail. And one of them in the back goes, "So, what are you guys here for? Looking for UFOs? Looking for aliens?" It's like, I just kind of turned around with my dry sense of humor and went like, "Does it show? I mean, do we look like it?" And you go, "Well, we don't normally see white men up here driving around in red Cadillacs unless they're out here for something weird," right? So we get them, we drop them off. They offered to let us use their horses because they say to us, "You don't want to go back up there. That's not where you need to be. If you want to see what you want to see, you need to go to this other place." They said it's a city of the dead. So I'm looking on the map, and surprisingly, they knew where it was. You will not find it. There is no city of the dead, or that is listed as a ruin. But where they pointed to it,
It's listed as ruins on the map.
it says ruins on the map. This is a freaky part. I have never been able to find this place again. And I have done, Google Earth Pro, slow searches back and forth over this thing forever. I could remember the azimuth that I'll share with you in a little bit, but I've done like resections, and I've tried to do intersections. I've tried to do everything I can, and just plain, map recon over the thing, and I cannot find it. I cannot find it again. But I do know that in New Mexico there are lists of ruins, and there are lists of ruins that have been found by people and explored briefly by archaeologists, and then the coordinates to them have been lost. So they're on the record, the lists of all of the known ruins.
And it's on Shikoma? Is that on Shikoma?
No. It was not there. It was in a completely different place. In fact, it was maybe 10 miles away from it as the crow flies, right? And it was more to the southeast than where we were currently.
So is it safe for now people to drive in a Cadillac to go explore, or is it not? Should they take a...
Well, yeah, don't go in a Cadillac. I mean, go in
drive a Jeep,
4-wheel drive, something, So we decided, okay, we're gonna go to these ruins the next day, and we did. We stocked up again with supplies, and again, foolishly, I don't think we ever anticipated that we were going to be doing things like that. We were going to be climbing up or moving around into ruins like that. We had no idea.
Wow.
I mean, I think we kind of thought we were going to be at the Abiquiu Inn, see what we wanted to see, or just go up on that mountaintop, which would have been a trail in and a trail back. Now we pull up into protected Pueblo lands on the reservation, and we're in the Cadillac, so we park the Cadillac, and then we camouflage it with tumbleweeds, which was just the most ridiculous thing in the world. It just looked like a big tumbleweed pyramid that you could see something shiny and red underneath of it, right? So it wouldn't have fooled anybody that drove by, but we did it. And we were carrying grocery bags filled with stuff because we didn't know how long we were going to be up there. And it is on this near vertical, not vertical, but very steep grade, going up to the top of a plateau. And the plateau is shaped like this, almost like a teardrop, okay?
Interesting.
So when we get there, there's a defensive wall, a low defensive wall, around the whole back, 3/4 of that teardrop. And after we get over that wall, which was like 4 feet tall, there were 6 kiva in there. Nowhere near the size of other kiva in the more established places, like in Chaco Canyon, for example. But there were 6 kiva there. And then at the far end, where the teardrop came to a point, it was really a saddle where there was other terrain that was there that went up higher, maybe another 500 feet. But what was really clear is that where that saddle met was whoever was living on this plateau built large defensive walls that were now on that saddle. They were canalizing whatever would have come across that saddle. You had a wide opening, and then it came into an opening with 10 to 15 foot high stone walls that they would have clearly been able to shoot down or throw rocks or throw spears down to whatever got caught into this very narrow opening of like 4 feet, 5 feet at the most. And it was clear that there had to have been some sort of a gate to control entry onto the plateau. What we decided to do, because we weren't really sure what was going to come of this place or why the Pueblo Indians told us to go there, so we split up. Each of us went and took a kiva, and we decided to spend a couple of hours just remote viewing on our own, going into an altered state and seeing what we could perceive there. And so after we were done, we met back up. We started a fire on a big rock, that was there. And we were just sitting there talking about what we perceived about this place. And what we perceived about this place was that this was a last stand place. I didn't really know what happened with the Anasazi until many years later. But the Anasazi, which is an Apache word for ancient enemy, the Puebloans they don't want to hear that word. They want you to refer to them as Puebloan ancestors now. But the Anasazi was the tribe, regardless of where they got the name from it. And what they did was, there are all kinds of rumors about who they were, what they became, what they once were as they evolved for nearly 1,200 years in this particular place called Chaco Canyon. But we didn't know any of that yet. We just sensed that this was a last stand. This was a place where a people fought. No, that was not it.
That's not it?
We wouldn't have been able to get up there.
Oh.
So we were standing there, around the fire, kind of hypnotizing ourselves because the wind was blowing kind of gently, but it was blowing and steady. And we were kicking this log that we had on the fire, big log. And every time we would kick it, of course, an entire galaxy of fire embers would come up, right? Kind of swirl up above us and back down. So we were fascinated just by that, looking at that in the sky. And all of a sudden, after we'd probably been doing that for 30 minutes, and yes, we were drinking beer, we see there was a rapidly descending bright light that dropped right straight down from where we were over Chaco Mountain. Dropped right straight down, right on the peak to where you could see it. It came straight down at the peak and then disappeared. So I didn't see it. Mel just described it. So we stopped kicking the log and we turned our attention to the mountain. And maybe 20 minutes later, another bright, really bright light. Now, I know the difference between a meteor, right? And this was not a meteor. It did not have a tail, a reentry, something burning up in the atmosphere coming in. It was a straight vertical, and it went straight right to the peak that you could see in the moonlight and then disappeared before it ever got to the tree line on the peak. So visible for a second, maybe 1.5 seconds, just guesstimating. I took the lens-static compass and shot an azimuth to it, and then I drew from where we were at the ruins, I drew a line to intersect on that azimuth, and it went straight across the peak of Chaco Mountain. And I extended the line further because they already told us the mountain was not where you wanted to go. This was the place to start. So now, just drawing a line on the map, I extended it past and over the top of Chaco Mountain, all the way almost up to the border, the New Mexico border. And it went straight through Pueblo Bonito and went straight through it, which was a long way to the northwest in New Mexico from where we were located presently. We stayed the entire night there and shot more azimuths, and there were only maybe 1 or 2 degrees deviations in what we were able to shoot, shooting an azimuth with a lens-static compass. And so when you extended the line again from where we were, 2 degrees or 3 degrees at the very most, it went over a place called Pueblo Alto. So it was a shift kind of to the north of where we were currently looking, northward 3 degrees or 2 degrees. So it sounds like a minor move, but when you extend it out that far, which is several hundred miles, then it broadens the track of the line. So our decision was wait till morning, which we did, go back down, unbury our tumbleweed camouflaged Cadillac, and start driving to Chaco Canyon. So we get to Chaco Canyon sometime in the afternoon, and we go in and park the car, and we want to start walking around, and we did. We went to Pueblo Bonito, which is the largest piece of it. Supposedly, it has living space for 3,000 people, but archaeologists, which I don't necessarily trust their opinion on it, and they're basing this on trash piles and debris piles and bodies, remains, those kinds of things. They think that maybe no more than 300 people ever lived there.
Really?
At all. And it took several hundred years to build, and more on that in a moment. So we walk around there. We walk up and we look at Pueblo Alto. There's a pathway you take. And we're up there looking around at that, which I was unimpressed with that because it's pretty much destroyed. So we come back down, and the park ranger is there. And he looks a little put out because we don't have a permit to be there, which he pointed out to us. We were parked where we weren't supposed to be parking. And we were saying, well, we're just going to hang out here till it gets dark, and we're going to go up to Pueblo Alto. And he's like, no, you're not. Oh, well, yes, we are. No, you're not. And we tried to chat him up by saying, well, we work for the intelligence community, and we've been sent here for a reason, we need to go up to Pueblo Alto. We need to be able to walk on the ruins at night. He goes, I don't care who you are. You're not going to go up there at night. He goes, none of these people can go up at night. You can't go up at night. He goes, and you do not have a permit to be here. You don't have a permit to be here like to camp, because we suggested we just sleep in the car and start early in the morning. No, you're not. The guy was intractable, which that's just kind of the nature of those guys there. So he was unimpressed with anything we said. But damn it, that gate on that road was going to lock at sundown, and we better be outside of it or we were going to get fined. So we mosey out and drive around to some place kind of south of Chaco Canyon, and then we park alongside a road, but we are now outside of the park. And we look and wait, and we had a light show all night long. It was the strangest thing I've ever seen. We saw vertical lights dropping down and disappearing before they hit the ground. We saw lights traversing horizontally from one side of the canyon bluff to another side of the canyon bluff and disappearing into the bluff. I saw it with my very own eyes, and so did Mel, and so did Ed. And we were drawing and capturing our notes because we knew we had to write this when we got back. So we put it all together and just kept going on during the night. Lights would glow out of the bluff, which my skepticism, was being challenged because it might be some guy trying to climb over on the bluff there. It's got a headlamp or a flashlight or something else, because these would sustain and glow, but they weren't flashlights. They were just sustained bright glows out of the bluff that would then just close off like that, just like go black. I have no idea what they were, except to say, that was anomalous activity, right? I wish Ron Blackburn could have been there to see it and measure it if he could have. The next day, we were there all night capturing, recording. I know people have said in the past, like, did you have a camera? No. You didn't have cameras on your phones. We didn't have cell phones then. This is in the 80s. So we would have had to have brought a 35 millimeter camera, which, by the way, the unit didn't have. There were no movie cameras that were consumer grade like that, unless they were some big ass camera.
Would you ever go back nowadays?
Well, yeah, but I've been there now several times.
Oh.
So we decided the next day we were going to go to Pueblo Alto, but we realized that the Smokey the Bear Ranger was not going to let us do that. So we came up with another plan. And the other plan was we were going to drive all the way around, and we were going to come in through the reservation, and we were going to drive through the reservation right up to the park boundary, and we were going to camouflage this red Cadillac again, and we were going to sneaky in through the, hop the fence and sneaky all the way up to Pueblo Alto. Had to get it done, all this way dressed up for nothing. We had to do something. So that's what we did. And I mean, we drove 49 miles over the worst washboard road I've ever seen, through some of the most impoverished little communities or, little outlier pueblos or trailers that the indigenous people were living in. And it was pretty sad and kind of shocking. And still, we got there. It was dark, completely dark. The moon had not come up yet. And so, yeah, we camouflaged our Cadillac and we hopped the fence. And this is where it gets really interesting. So we have about 2,500 meters to walk, give or take, based on the map, to go from where we were to there on a certain azimuth. And two of us have lensatic compasses. Ed has one and I have one. And I'm in the middle, Ed's to my left. No, I'm in the middle, Ed's to my right, and Mel was to my left. And we spread about 20 meters apart instead of kind of walking single file. Why we did that, I'm not really sure, except I think we didn't want to overshoot following just one compass. We wanted to have, intersecting azimuths to get up there. So we did that, and we were walking pretty slow. The brush was not thick, so we moved easily, but the footing was awkward.
Man, we gotta make a movie. You have all the details of every little frame. We're gonna make a
I've
movie
told this
about
story
this.
not that many times, but I've told this story a lot of times over the decades. We get what I estimated was probably about 800 meters out. All of a sudden, I have a ring in my ear, which is a piercing ring in both of my ears that I can feel inside my skull. And I just stop, and it lasts for about 20 to 30 seconds.
That's a
And
long time.
As soon as that happened, Mel says, did you guys hear that? Or did you guys feel that? And Ed says, yes. And Mel goes, I think we just got scanned. And I thought, scanned by who? My initial thought when I heard it was like, is this like some special, dog collar electric fence thing that the Forest Service has put up, the Park Service has put up? So people are trying to sneak in the back way. We broke some sort of electronic beam, and the next thing we're going to see is that guy standing up on the hill with a flashlight looking for us. That's immediately what I thought. So we were like, oh, well, okay. So we started walking again. We got another.
What did he mean by we got scanned? Did he explain?
We got scanned meant that the ringing that was in all of our ears that we all experienced in our head, somebody scanned us. Something scanned us. Something was sensing and scanning us to see what we were.
Yeah.
I mean, speculating here now, right?
Right.
So we walk another 500 meters or so, and it happens again. So same thing, same tone, same intensity, all three of us simultaneously. All three of us acknowledge it. And then the discussion was, are we going to keep going? I mean, after all, we're just three assholes out here in the dark we have no weapons, no nothing. I mean, we don't even have protein bars. So what are we going to do? And we don't even have anything to trade, right? So we decide, probably foolishly, to keep going. I mean, we came this far, right?
I was hoping that you'd say that.
Yeah. So we keep walking. It does not happen again. It doesn't happen again. So we get to Pueblo Alto, and we're looking around. It looks no different in the night than it looked in the day, except it looks more destroyed, right? Because you can't see really anything at that point. And we wait for the moon to come up so we can kind of pick some spots where we feel would be safe to be in and look. And we couldn't find or see or hear anything around there. I mean, you didn't even hear insects. It was just still, completely still. You didn't hear anything from on the reservation, nothing. It was just still air. So there's a wall there that's about 3 feet high. And it's about, as I recall, like 2.5, maybe 3 feet wide. So we laid down on this wall just so we can look up in the sky. Why we did that or made the decision to do that is I think that we just felt that what were we going to do, all three of us, like spin around circles looking out across the desert, because all the activity that we saw, the horizontal stuff and the vertical stuff, was down in the canyon proper. We hadn't seen anything up at Pueblo Alto in terms of lights moving or anything of that nature. So we just decided to go like head to foot, right, along this wall, and all of us looking up. And we were there for a long time doing that, because I can remember occasionally, Mel falling asleep and starting to snore. And a couple of times I woke myself up snoring. But we were all looking up in the sky. We keep kicking each other in the head going, wake up, we need 3 sets of eyes. We can't have something happen, have 2 of us asleep and one of us see it, because that will not be statistically relevant and nobody will believe the person that saw it. So we had to stay awake. At some point after midnight, close to 1:01 or 01:30, something happened in the sky above us. And the best thing I can describe
Oh, man.
is that it looked like a piece of cellophane was in the sky because I could see the starlight behind it,
What?
but it was bending the light of the stars behind it. And I extended my arms like this to try to see, give it some scale to see with my arms outstretched. And so outstretched above me, okay,
That's huge.
It filled my hand.
That's huge.
Yes. I'm sure there's a trig problem that could be applied to that where you could figure that out. But, and this thing just appeared from a closed point to opened up to that diameter, and it was just bending the starlight behind it.
And it was right above you guys?
Right above us. And it's right above Pueblo Alto. We were just laying on the wall looking up, so it was right above Pueblo Alto. It was that way for 20 minutes. And then it just closed up on itself, and it was a normal sky above us again. It didn't drift or go away. It didn't go out. It didn't do anything. It just closed off like that, closed itself. And so we all, we sat up, we had our notebooks, and so we were now writing all of this stuff. But we quickly went back into that position because we were eager about what maybe we were going to see again. And it went for maybe another 60 minutes or so that there was nothing. It's been a long time since I've looked at my notes. Another 60 minutes or so of nothing. And then the exact same thing happens again. It just opens, and there it is, bending the starlight behind it, looking like a piece of crumpled cellophane up there, moving and morphing and bending starlight so it didn't come directly through from behind it, right? Now, we saw nothing enter that, and we saw nothing come out of it. I know enough about anomalous, weather and atmospheric disturbances and distortions. I've seen them before. That's not what this was. This was neither moving across the sky or anything else. It was opening above a place, an ancient place, and closing back again. We saw this happen 3 times that night, and then it just stopped happening. So in retrospect, what did we believe this was? We believe, but we have no evidence, but we believe, other than what we saw, that it was a portal opening and a portal closing and a portal opening and a portal closing again. Not in an exact time, but in sequence, opening and closing. I don't know if it's like a traffic light changing when no cars are at the stop, at the stoplight. I don't know. But you have to let your mind wander to all that based on all of the other anomalous, illuminated activity that we saw in the area. Now, here's this place, which was intriguing and very mysterious. And, I spent the next decades studying about Chaco Canyon, about the the Anasazi Indians, and about this place.
Wow.
Archaeologists believe, as I said to you, many things about it. They believe that they didn't have the wheel, and that they carried, the trees that they used to build the roofs of their massive kivas by hand, get lots of Indians to carry, one 4,000-pound tree, which was just ridiculous. It's like, and now you have all of these kivas, small and large, there. How somebody can think that people who have the knowledge to build a perfectly round geometric design of a circle, to think that they wouldn't have the intellect to then turn that around and understand that that would roll instead of having to carry 4,000-pound trees is preposterous. It's just preposterous. It's insulting, frankly. if you want to look at that. Then if you understand how all of the structures in Chaco Canyon are laid out, they are laid out in perfect alignment to one another in the places where they wanted them to be aligned perfectly. Certain facing walls, certain kinds of windows, but these are structures that are massive. And you could have a wall that's 500 meters long, and it can be 3.5, 4 kilometers away over broken terrain, uneven terrain that you cannot see from Pueblo Bonito. You cannot see the other structures, but they are aligned perfectly and are near just millimeters off, at the most a centimeter or two. Now, the only way you could do something like that is if you had some really advanced knowledge of surveying and placement of these things. And it couldn't have been done just because you were eyeballing where the sun came up and then aligning the structure based on that. I guess in trial and error you could do that, but I wouldn't want to have to move a wall because you're off so far, right?
Wow.
So it meant that something was giving them this knowledge and this ability to do this, or they were discovering it themselves. Either way, you can't tell me that a society that has the ability to do that, or almost for as many structures as there are in Chaco Canyon, that they were so underdeveloped that they would not have had the knowledge of building something and using the wheel, even if a wheel was man-powered, right? If it was pulled by human beings as opposed to beasts. It just doesn't make any sense that that's what would happen to that. There are lots of allegations made toward the Anasazi that they denuded the land, that they overplanted, and that they misutilized water resources and other things. And these are all speculations being made by old and many new archaeologists, because archaeology is very much you can't propose new theories without being pretty much lambasted and in many cases ostracized, because it's one of those professions, one of those academic professions where they know best. Just ask them. So anybody else that poses a new theory about something, it's an uphill swim, and usually it's an uphill swim that results in a trip down the river. It's not a good thing. They will professionally destroy someone that doesn't toe, the interpretive line established by old archaeology transferring into new. Yes, that's how it is.
I'm curious then, what if there was a team of remote viewers that were given targets that are, essentially based on the timeline of human history? Obviously, they don't know what the target or when the target is, right?
It's the same question that Dalton asked. And
really?
Yes. Yeah, you can do that. But it has to be, it's a long, laborious effort to do that. And I will say to you, to what end? To what end?
I think
he wanted to see when the pyramids were built. Okay, so when were they built? We don't know. Okay, so that then means
a lot of
that's a timeline that you now have to make each new target, and you could go back in 1,000-year increments. Now he claimed, I've not read this, but he said, see, I was thinking, okay, well, they're 4,000 years old, or maybe 6,000 years old. And he was saying that, no, there's new thought that they could be 23,000 years old. Okay. Well, if you wanted to see that, we don't have really hard evidence of 23,000 years. So remember, you'd have to start based on the concept of the target. So you have to have a start point. And let's say you start at 6,000 years. At 6,000 years back from current era, or what does it look like there? You'd have a remote viewing team look at that and come back with all the verbal and visual data, sketches, etc., about that. And if it does not show signs of construction of the 3 pyramids or others, then you could go back 5,000 feet. Another 5,000 years. Okay? Again, you'd have to describe it. And remember, because we don't have any feedback, you're relying entirely upon what the viewers are producing, and you can look at that for the experiment of doing it, but you have no way of validating that. And if they are still not describing construction ongoing, that in other words, the structures appear to be there, then you have to go back another 5,000 years. So the idea is you go all the way back, making these 5,000-year jumps until there's nothing there.
And then you narrow in.
Now you have to bracket the other direction again.
So then you have to assign a time frame to every target. Is that
Every
true?
target.
So then my question becomes, now this is maybe not out there at all based on our conversation. Recently, I saw this, and I don't know how real it is, right? AI is able to read visuals on someone's mind, right? I don't think it's unrealistic. I think it's very likely that it's happening. I think that apparently they're using non-invasive mind reading, some sort of...
It would have to deal with facial expressions, eye movements. It would have to be that.
They're scanning their brain.
Oh, okay.
So then they're scanning the brain and drawing a picture
different.
of what is...
Sure.
And visualizing their thoughts, right? Now, if that technology were to be fully
That
mature,
technology has actually been around for a while.
Oh.
I mean, that was done by Harvard Dream researchers trying to, and this was done 30 years ago, looking at, mapping, maybe not 30, maybe more like 25. But what was being done is they were trying to find out what was going on in the mind of rats at night while they were sleeping, and so they could extrapolate over to what was going on with us. And what they were doing is they had probes inserted into the brain of a rat. And what they did was let a rat run in a maze to find food.
Oh.
And as the rat ran in the maze to find food, they had a computer that was mapping where the rat was and what the rat was doing, whether it tried to turn left into a wall or whether it went to the right down something. And what they started doing with the computer is generating pretty rudimentary graphics that kind of helped them see an image of what they were speculating that the rat saw. So if the rat's looking all the way down a long corridor that has 3 turns to the right, openings to the right, and 2 to the left, the computer is generating that because that's where the rat is, and they can see that, and they're looking at what the rat's brain is firing and what it's doing. And as the rat moves down, if it goes left, well, they understand they're mapping, the neuron firing and about what's happening there when it turns left. So anyway, long story short with all of this, it gives them a computer-generated image of what they're believing that the rat sees with physical eyes when it's in the maze looking for food. And the whole reason for this was because at night, when the rat was sleeping, and they're still monitoring it, now what's happening is they're watching to see what the rat's brain is doing. And what the rat's brain did is the rat was running the maze in its head, in its sleep, as it's dreaming. So the computer is showing that because it's just generating based on the same signal, stimuli, and inputs, right? And this is where they came up with some of their early conclusions that dreams are simulations. Or rehearsals, rather. We're rehearsing. If we don't give our brains something to work on at night, it'll work on whatever it comes up with. And it's usually something it's trying to rehearse and work its way through, just like the rat. The rat's
Problem
asleep,
solving.
and the rat is trying to run the maze. It's rehearsing running the maze, even though it is asleep and in a dream state.
So on that thought, the early research, all these years later, right? Now they're saying we can actually, it's just like how you can type in one of the new OpenAI technology, you can type in a text sentence and they'll make a video using AI.
Yeah.
Now, that just recently came out. And what they're saying is they can actually read non-invasively what the thought is and produce an image supposedly exactly the same as what you're visualizing inside your brain. Now, that's interesting because what happens when that technology evolves to become even more advanced or more sophisticated, and then we plug it into a remote viewer or non-invasively, right?
My concern is that it becomes almost the same level of useless crutch that, drugs are.
Oh, interesting.
You need to build this muscle on your own. You need to understand the abilities that you have. You need to recognize them. You need to exercise them, embrace them. They were given to us for a reason, as we've established. What that reason is, I can only speculate, but what I can say is that because we exist now in a world where we don't recognize and nurture this ability in our youth or anyone else, in fact, we try very hard to train them out of it. And now we're trying to adopt something that says, you don't need to worry about it. The AI will sort it out for you. It means that children are not going to build this muscle. And doing this is the building of a muscle.
Oh.
This is the honing and the refining and the tuning of your mind and your brain to be capable of doing this work. The idea that we might use it to enhance something or do something else with it, once you have an extraordinarily well-trained, well-rounded individual that fully understands this and is standing 1 foot in the physical world and 1 foot in the non-physical world, well, okay. If you want to
Sounds like using psychedelics without training.
It's the same thing as far as I'm concerned. And people ask that all the time. There are people who will say to me, why aren't you doing ayahuasca when you're doing this? Because then the ayahuasca's in charge. Okay? Same reason we're not doing it with a psilocybin, because then it's in charge. You're having the experience that the drug gives you and not the experience to utilize what the creator gave you. It didn't come with an instruction manual, grind up some jungle root and use that to enhance yourself. No, it did not. So the fact that it's put here, okay, but there's lots of things that are put here on the planet. Doesn't mean we have to
One needs to
smoke them
master
or
their
step
own
in
mind.
it or, eat it or anything else, right?
One needs to master their mind before they use any aid rather than...
Absolutely.
It's like opening a portal without knowing where it's going. They need to be trained and prepared.
I'm glad you
before.
I knew you got it anyway. You were just trying to lead me there, but because I know you. So, but really, seriously, no. I mean, it's fascinating, but no, because look at where we are now already.
And people are already undertrained.
50% of the population of the planet, Pew Research says, are below average intelligence, and now rather than instigate
Yes.
training programs that are going to take people and strengthen them and empower them, awaken them, transform them, and building this, because you don't have to be a brilliant mastermind of anything to learn that this gift is yours. How different would people be if they began to see the world through those kinds of eyes as opposed to methamphetamine or THC or whatever else is out there? And I get it, I understand.
It's easy portal.
Not like I'm some babe in the woods, like I haven't done stupid things in my life, but you cannot live your life letting those kinds of things define how you see the world
It's an
and how
easy
you interact
portal.
in the world.
Without training how to enter, they just go wherever it
Yeah.
goes. The thing is in charge. Now, this is where I also want to lead that conversation, and then we'll go into why people need to develop this skill, right?
Sure.
And how it's innately our gift. And
No more questions about Chaco Canyon?
oh, I got way more. I'm gonna save that for the next episode because I got a lot more questions. And in fact, your details are so key because people who are listening, some of them might be wondering, why am I knowing and learning about this detail? But as I'm listening, I'm like, this gives me a complete picture of how important the events are step by step, step by step. And in fact, what you did in how you verbally described it paints the picture of not only how important it is to know the details, but how important it is to understand every detail is part of how you investigated every case, how you investigated the targets, how you learn about the targets. And if people are to learn about their mind, they need to understand that it's not just some cool concept that they need to know. They need to learn about every detail so they can master. Because in the old days of so-called ancient knowledge, many say the detail is where the magic is, because the details allows you to connect your mind to the elements that form the physical world. And the more someone is aware of them, the more control we have about the elements. So back to the question about the AI, and here's another direction I was wondering what your thoughts are. Now, let's say we get a group of highly trained who have mastered their mind and the tools of remote viewing. Then we put them on this non-invasive headset and we read their thoughts, right? Now, instead of saying, hey, we're just going to have them do the thing, it's just going to speed up the process of documenting the visuals. Why I'm asking this and painting this picture is, what if we get a group of 1,000 remote viewers? Let's say they're all highly trained. They've mastered the skills because of your training or our training, right? And we use AI to read what they're visualizing, and they know how to direct those thoughts. Then what would happen if we do A/B testing? One group does, maybe let's use the pyramid for an example. Maybe it's 5,000 year increment, and they do these, and we split them up into these. Maybe it's not 2 groups. Maybe it's 20 groups. And then what interesting data, I wonder, would come up with?
Well, in the model you just project there, I mean, if you're going to take a large team of highly trained remote viewers and hook them up to something like this, it's just an advanced experiment, and you're still looking for correlation of data. So it would be very interesting to see what each individual produces. It would be very interesting to see what they produce, since they're going to be doing it in the blind, right? Only operating off the 2 sets of 4 numbers that they're given, which are representative of the concept of the target in the mind of the individual assigning those numbers. It would be interesting to see what they come up with, but we have to understand that, and I know you agree, first they have to be able to recognize the ability and exercise the ability and build that mental muscle themselves.
Absolutely.
Then the other thing is just an extended experiment to look at it.
Yeah.
And if you were going to do it, it would be, you'd have to have a control group, and then you'd have to have, the AI group. So you would have remote viewers operating without AI, and you'd have to have remote viewers operating with AI. And then it might be interesting to just take untrained people and say, hey, I'm going to give you 2 sets of 4 numbers, and when I give them to you, all I want you to do is close your eyes
and draw
and
and write.
Imagine what you think it might be.
Now, let's say we do it over.
That would be a good comparative study to see, but
let's say it's not even 1,000. Maybe it's more than 1,000. Let's say for some reason we got the funding, and it's over 10,000 individuals. They're all paid to do this, and they're all
a lot of AI
highly trained. And let's say we have access to that technology, a few years from now, and it's well funded. I wonder what sort of explorative or what kind of data we could get about the so-called history. Because right now, archaeology is as good as guessing, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and they guess poorly quite often.
And then if they don't guess according to the standard narrative, they get shut down.
They do. I think the original cancel culture is academics dealing, who are archaeologists. They shut each other down very quickly, and they ostracize people and cut them out of the herd.
That is true. So now if we have all this data and we can plot correlation, and let's say we're not doing that over on all of the major events. Let's say we're doing it on important events that leads to the answer of humanity asking, where did we come from, why we're here, and where we're going. And if we can have large data on those, even starting with multiple simple targets.
I don't think that would answer that question of,
Got it.
where did we come from, why are we here, and where are we going?
Maybe
But
a glimpse.
it would certainly give us a really interesting perspective on points in history that remain a mystery to us. Like I would love to figure out or see how 80-ton stones quarried 2,000 feet below in a river end up being stuck in the wall of a
We should pitch that show as a new History Channel
in Peru,
show.
right? You're like, how does that happen?
Do you think that something like that, I mean, heck, I think in no time we could possibly have people like the History Channel be interested in the show that can be produced specifically using that.
They're already trying to just, at this juncture, in all honesty, they're trying to figure out what do we do with the sheer volume of data that remote viewers are giving them now.
They don't have AI.
Right. And well, that was actually what Travis asked me the first time I was briefing him on the sheer volume of data, the thousands of pages, the thousands of data points that were there. He asked, like, do you have AI to correlate this? I don't, because I don't have access to a university computer, right? So, and plus it would take some programming and it would take some folks doing data entry or a way to scan it. So
I would love to help
could
you with
happen.
that. Over the next few years, I bet we could build an AI model to analyze that data.
I think that would be really good because right now, every time we do a History Channel, we do a Beyond Skinwalker Ranch for them. The workload is enormous because, first of all, it's 50 remote viewers or it's 72 remote viewers. They're scattered out 6 different countries, all these different time zones. We bring them into Thinkific and let them, see the video briefings of what it is and the coordinates, and they're told here's what I need you to do. They can download all the documents. They have to go do their session. It's all in the blind, and then they have to upload their session results, and that's all great. But now I get notified when it gets there. But now
That's a lot of data.
it's little old me that has to sit down with Shannon or somebody else, right, and pull that stuff out and start going through it all.
Wow.
And correlating data. And now, because of some people who kind of overstepped and did things that they know I don't allow them to do, which is claim ownership of their sketches and claim ownership of data, and do that kind of, well, the only reason they're doing that is because they're trying to
Become famous or something?
They're trying to either teach or they're trying to get their name in a book with their sketches or they're trying to do something else. And that's not what I teach. What I teach is that it's not about one of us. It's about all of us. This is a collective effort. It goes to the rules of remote viewing, right?
Yeah.
It's not 100% accurate. It never has been and it never will be. Why? Because it's a human interpretation of detecting and decoding and objectifying
requires
8-dimensional
groups.
hyperspace waveform from a holographic matrix field, right? So you interpret, and that's why it's not 100% accurate.
That's why we need more people to correlate the data.
Yes, absolutely. And then the next is, you never trust the results of a single remote viewer operating independently of other remote viewers. Why? Because of rule number 1. It's not 100% accurate. So what you want are 100 or 1,000 or 10,000, but realistically manageable. I could never correlate the data of 100 remote viewers because when you're asking them to do that, I can't do it. I mean, I couldn't do it with a team of 10 people. I mean, it would take
A long time.
It would take weeks. It would take at least 2 weeks to do it. At least
So
a
we
week
need AI.
probably to do it.
We need to
It
build
needs
a
to be
model.
there. Otherwise, what happens is I drink a lot of coffee, eat a lot of armodafinil, and stay up very many long hours, correlating
Yeah, we're not
data
going to
and
have you
pulling
do
it
that.
together.
We're going to build something.
But now what I was saying, and the fact that these people that there are some of the participants who are wandering off the reservation on this thing and forgetting everything that they were taught, and that's really disappointing to me.
Wow.
Because the third rule in remote viewing is it's not a standalone endeavor. It was always meant to be used with other either research methodologies or diagnostic methodologies or intelligence collection methodologies. It was never intended to be a standalone. So those three rules govern everything about remote viewing. When you violate those rules, one or all of them, you run the risk of jeopardizing yourself. And I really couldn't care less about the people that jeopardize themselves, except when they do that, it jeopardizes the phenomenon itself, which means it destroys or takes it takes a chunk out of the great work being done in humility by everyone that's participating in these things.
Yeah.
So now, in addition to just having to correlate the way we're doing it, we have to now do aggregate sketches, which was done in a unit where you're now looking at thousands of pages of visual sensory data, and you're, like we were talking about the other night, if it's this little 3-foot high fuzzy thing that's running around out in the woods and occasionally coming up to where people are living, and you see that across 12 or 17 viewers out of 60, well, you aggregate that image. Instead of putting 12 different images out there and then watching people jockey for position to say, oh, that one's mine, and oh, check it out. 3 minutes, 17 seconds into the episode, that's my sketch kind of thing. I hate that. It's fine for us to do it as viewers when we do this grand summary and stuff like that and talk about it.
Yeah, I
Because
gotcha.
I'll even point that out and I'll go, William did sketch this one, and Linda sketched this one, and Mari sketched that one, and Ted did this one, and Gary that one. That's fine, but that's as far as it goes. You don't turn around, and walk out into the public eye and start claiming fame over these things, or calling up or emailing the person about whom the show was based, and go, oh, I heard you're writing a book. Would you like all copies of my entire sessions and sketches?
Wow.
No, don't do that, because it'll get back to me. Always does. Because people know I don't want to hear that, and it always gets back to me. So now we have to change all of the visual sensory data that goes into the briefings online, and I had to tell the producer and the director, I can't give you 12 sketches of little black fuzzy things that are 4 feet high or 3 feet high anymore. Now I have to give you an aggregate sketch of that, because then nobody can claim it, and it's just generated with, it's generated on a board with Apple Pencil, right? Now, you could take that if you had AI that had the ability to scan through there and then aggregate.
We're going to talk about the AI.
Yeah.
I think the next episode will really get to what the heck this remote viewing is in terms of training, and how someone can open up this gift that is innately theirs, and that we get to use it collectively to better humanity.
Absolutely.
And just wait, because what David's about to say about this entire topic and the training thereof allows you to understand how much you have that you have no idea that you have. And I want you to think on this question as you turn on the next episode, and make sure you subscribe. And as you think about this, imagine if you woke up tomorrow and you found out you could fly. And you found out that your whole life you've been lied to, that in fact it's not even an intentional lie, but it's just a lie, or you just thought you've been lied to, whatever it is, you thought you couldn't fly. And you were for sure about that. You were like, no, I can't fly. But tomorrow, somehow you confirm the fact that you could fly, and that you could fly safely, immediately. What's the first thing you're going to do? And how will you use the skill, right? So we'll see you in the next episode. Looking forward to it.